The year is 2029. The room smells of old paper and new coffee. Dr. Eris Thorne adjusts his glasses. He slides a single sheet of paper across the oak table. The report is from the Midwestern Soil Health Institute. It's a summary of a 10-year study, covering 12 counties, 470 farms. Thorne looks at the man across from him, a county commissioner named Frank Gable. Frank has been on the board for 30 years. He's seen droughts. He's seen floods. He's seen commodity prices boom and bust. He picks up the report. His eyes scan the columns of data. Water infiltration rates, organic matter percentages, microbial biomass, yields per acre, input costs per bushel. Then he gets to the final column, net profit per acre. His finger stops. He traces the line back to the farm's name, Vance Regenerative. He looks at the number again, $782 per acre, net. The next highest farm on the list is $314. Most are under $200. Some are negative. Frank puts the paper down. He looks at Dr. Thorne. The room is silent, just the hum of the air conditioning. Frank says, "I remember that name. Vance. I remember the girl. She came before the board about 10 years ago, wanted a grant for a conservation project. We turned her down." He shakes his head slowly. He says it again, quieter this time. "We turned her down." This is the story of that girl, and the farm she was told she would ruin. It's a story about the most dangerous kind of certainty, the kind that comes from a place of love. And it's a story you're not going to hear anywhere else. These are the stories we tell, the quiet rebellions that change the world. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to this channel. Join the community that values the truth found in the dirt and in the work of human hands. Because what happened on that farm needs to be heard. Let's go back, not 10 years, but 11. The year is 2018. The kitchen table at the Vance farm is solid maple, built by a great-grandfather, sanded smooth by generations of elbows and coffee cups. Elias Vance lays a sheaf of papers on it. The John Deere logo is bright green at the top. He smiles at his daughter, Sarah. She is 24 years old, home from college for 2 years, a degree in agronomy, a fire in her eyes. Elias is 56, a man made of work and worry. He loves 2 things more than anything, his daughter and this farm. The farm is 2,500 acres of prime Iowa corn and soybean land. It is a testament to modern agriculture. GPS-guided tractors, automated irrigation systems, variable rate fertilizer application. Elias built it into a powerhouse. He did it with leverage. He did it with technology. He did it with debt. Good debt, he always called it. The kind of debt that buys efficiency. These papers on the table represent the next step, the future. He slides them towards Sarah. "This is it, kiddo. The 9620RX, 2 of them, and the new S780 combine, with the Cornhead and the Draper platform. Fully autonomous package. They'll practically run themselves." His voice is full of pride. This isn't just equipment, it's an inheritance. It's the culmination of his life's work. A farm so efficient, so perfect, it could run on its own. He taps a number at the bottom of the page. $360,000. That's our down payment. The bank is financing the rest. At a good rate, 2.8%. We just need your signature. He says it casually. Your signature. Because Sarah is now a partner in the farm. A junior partner. Her name is on the business account, on the deeds. He did this the day she graduated. A gesture of trust, a promise of continuity. Sarah doesn't look at the papers. She looks at her father, her quiet, powerful, loving father. The man who taught her how to drive a tractor, the man who believes in progress more than he believes in rain. "Dad," she says. Her voice is steady. "We can't do this." Elias frowns, a small crease between his brows. "What do you mean we can't?" "The numbers work. I ran them 3 times. This purchase will increase our efficiency by 12%. It will reduce our labor costs. It's the smart move. It's always about the smart move." She pushes the papers back toward him. "We have too much debt already. Our input costs are soaring. We're spending a fortune on fertilizer that just washes away. We're spraying for pests that exist because we killed all their predators. This is just more of the same. A more expensive version of a system that's breaking." Elias leans back in his chair. He crosses his arms. "This is the system that works, Sarah. This is how you farm at scale. This is how you feed people. This isn't some hobby garden. It's a business. And this is the cost of doing business." "I know," she says. "But what if there's a different way? A better way? A way that doesn't involve a multi-million-dollar line of credit. A way that works with the land, not against it." He looks at her, and for the first time, she sees it. Not anger, not contempt. Something softer, and in some ways worse. Pity. He sees a child, an idealist, someone who read too many books and spent too little time in the real world. "Sarah," he says. His voice is gentle now, kind. "I love your passion. I do. But those ideas, cover crops, rotational grazing, that's small-time stuff. It doesn't scale. It can't pay the bills on an operation this size. I've been farming this land for 40 years. I know what it can do, and I know what it can't. I am not going to be the man who lets you bankrupt this family. I am not going to let you fail." He believes he is protecting her. He is absolutely certain he is doing the right thing. This is the most dangerous limitation, the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are helping you. It cannot be fought with anger. It can only be disproven, with decades of work. Sarah stands up. She feels a cold, quiet resolve settle in her chest. "I'm not signing it, Dad." She walks out of the kitchen. She leaves him there with the glossy brochures and the promise of a future she does not want. The silence in the house is heavy, full of love and misunderstanding. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by someone you love. Someone who was sure they knew your limits better than you did. Someone who was trying to protect you. Tell me about it in the comments below, because what Sarah did next was not an act of rebellion. It was an act of faith. Faith in something older than machines. That night she couldn't sleep. The house was quiet. The argument with her father hung in the air, unresolved. She went to the attic. It was hot and smelled of dust and cedar. In a corner under a canvas tarp was a trunk. Her grandfather's trunk. She opened it. Inside were old photographs, a broken pocket watch, and a stack of leather-bound ledgers. She took them back to her room. She opened the first one. The date on the first page was 1955. The handwriting was meticulous. Her grandfather, a man she barely remembered, had documented everything. Every planting, every harvest, every expense, every profit. Sarah sat on her floor under a single lamp and read. The farm was smaller then, only 600 acres, but the numbers told a story that stunned her. The yields were lower than theirs today, of course, but the input costs were almost zero. He saved his own seed. He used manure from his own cattle for fertilizer. He rotated crops in a complex 7-year cycle. Corn, then oats, then clover, then wheat, then back to pasture. He had chickens, he had pigs, he had a small orchard, he had a dozen streams of income, and he had no debt. Not a single line item for a bank loan. Every piece of equipment was bought used and paid for, cash. At the bottom of each year's summary, he calculated his net profit. It was shockingly high, higher on a per-acre basis than what they were making now. With all their technology, with all their debt. In the margins he wrote notes, philosophies, observations. On a page from 1962, a drought year, he wrote, "The clover fields held the dew. The corn with deep roots found water. The cattle ate the standing hay. We made less, but we owed nothing. The land provides for those who provide for it." And then, on the last page of the last ledger, from 1975, the year before he died, he wrote the 4 words that would change her life. "The land pays its own way." It was a philosophy, a promise, a challenge. Sarah closed the book. The sun was coming up. She knew what she had to do. It wasn't about fighting her father. It was about proving her grandfather right. The land pays its own way. The next morning she went to her father. He was in the machine shed, staring at the empty space where the new tractors were supposed to go. He looked tired. He looked sad. She didn't restart the argument. She made a proposal instead. "Give me the bottomland 80. The 80 acres down by the creek, the land they hadn't seriously farmed in 20 years. It was too wet in the spring, too rocky. The soil was compacted and poor." Her father called it their worthless 80. He looked at her, confused. "Why? Let me farm it, my way. I'll use a portion of the money that would have been the down payment, just a small portion, to get started. I'll pay you rent, fair market rent, and I won't interfere with the main operation. Let me try, Dad." Elias looked at his daughter. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but also a steel he hadn't seen before. He thought about it. What was the harm? She would try her little experiment. She would see how hard it was. She would see that her books and her theories didn't work in the real world. She would fail. And in failing, she would learn. She would come back to his way of thinking. It was a hard lesson, but maybe it was the one she needed. "All right," he said. "The worthless 80 is yours. Don't come asking me for a bailout when it goes south." "I won't," she said. The deal was done. A quiet secession. 2 farms side by side. One built on debt and diesel. The other on a philosophy from a leather-bound book. Sarah took $30,000, not from the farm account, from her own savings, the money her grandmother had left her. The John Deere dealer had quoted her that much for the guidance system alone. Sarah went to auctions. She drove down gravel roads looking for equipment sitting in fence rows. She bought a 1978 Alice Chalmers 7040 tractor, 140 horsepower. It had rust on the fenders and the seat was torn. She paid $6,500 for it, cash. She bought a 15-foot John Deere 750 no-till drill from the 1990s, $8,000, cash. She bought an old chisel plow and a disc. She bought a used haybine and a small square baler. Total investment in machinery, $22,000, cash. Her father watched her haul the old iron into her yard. He shook his head. He felt a deep, aching sorrow. He was watching his daughter choose to be poor, to struggle. He didn't understand. It wasn't a choice to struggle. It was a choice to be free. Free from payments, free from dependency, free to fail on her own terms. The first thing she did was not plow. She didn't plant corn. She didn't plant soybeans. She planted a cover crop, a complex 16-species cocktail, cereal rye, hairy vetch, daikon radishes, sunflowers, buckwheat. Her neighbors thought she was crazy. Frank Gable, the county commissioner, drove by one day. He saw the field of what looked like weeds. He called Elias. "What in the world is your girl doing down there?" Elias sighed. "It's an experiment, Frank. Just an experiment." The word got around the co-op, the coffee shop. Sarah Vance was planting weeds. She was trying to be a hippie farmer. She was going to starve. Sarah ignored them. She spent her days on that old Alice Chalmers, fixing hydraulic leaks, rewiring the lights. She spent her evenings reading soil science textbooks and her grandfather's ledgers. The land pays its own way. That fall, she didn't harvest the cover crop. She bought 50 head of stocker cattle, young steers. She turned them out onto the 80 acres. She used temporary electric fencing. She moved them every single day. Intensive rotational grazing. The cattle ate the lush green growth. Their hooves broke up the soil crust. Their manure fertilized the field. For free. She was mimicking the ancient patterns of the prairie, the bison, grazing, moving, returning. The land began to change, slowly at first. The water in the creek running off her property started to clear. The smell of the earth was different, sweeter, more alive. She took soil samples. The first year, her organic matter was 1.8%. Pathetic. By the end of the year, after the grazing, it was 2.3%. A tiny change, but it was a start. It was proof. Her father, on his 2,500 acres, had a great year, record yields. He bought a new truck. He felt a pang of guilt and a little bit of vindication. See, he thought, this is how it's done. Then came the second year, the drought year. It started in May. The rain just stopped. The sun beat down. The corn on her father's fields began to curl. The ground cracked open. He had irrigation on some fields, but the cost of running the pumps was astronomical. His crops withered. The shallow-rooted plants couldn't find water in the compacted soil. But on Sarah's 80 acres, something different was happening. The cover crops from the year before had created a thick thatch on the soil surface. It acted like a mulch. It kept the ground cool. It prevented evaporation. The roots of the diverse plants, especially the deep-rooted radishes and sunflowers, had created channels deep into the earth. When the rare rains did come, the water didn't run off. It soaked in. Her soil was a sponge. His was a brick. She had planted a drought-tolerant variety of heritage corn that year, and she interseeded it with cowpeas. The corn grew, not tall, not perfect, but it grew. Her cattle grazed on sorghum Sudan grass that thrived in the heat. That fall, her father's harvest was a disaster. He had to file a massive crop insurance claim just to pay the bank. He lost money, a lot of it. Sarah harvested her small corn crop. The yield was only 90 bushels to the acre. Her father, in a good year, got 220. But her cost to produce that corn was almost nothing. No fertilizer, no herbicide, no insecticide, no crop insurance premiums. She sold the corn directly to a local distillery for a premium. She sold her 50 head of cattle, fat from the summer grazing, at a profit of $400 a head. She sat at her grandfather's maple table, the same table where she had refused to sign the papers. She did the math. After all expenses, after paying herself a small salary, she had netted $21,000, cash. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a profit. In the worst drought in 50 years, her father had lost nearly $500,000. He didn't talk about it, but she saw the worry in his eyes, the weight of the payments, the quiet fear that the system he believed in was more fragile than he thought. The land pays its own way. The third year, the rains returned, but the markets collapsed. An international trade war. Corn prices plummeted to below the cost of production. It was a bloodbath for farmers. Neighbors sold out. Foreclosure auctions became common. Elias Vance, with his massive scale, was dangerously exposed. He had to sell his grain at a huge loss. He was losing money on every single bushel that left his farm. The bank called him daily. He started selling off equipment to make the loan payments. First the new truck, then one of the older tractors. But Sarah was insulated. She had diversified. She planted less corn. She planted more pasture. She expanded her cattle herd to 100 head. She started selling grass-fed beef directly to customers in the city. She had a waiting list. She sold heritage wheat berries to a local baker. She sold eggs from her flock of free-range chickens. She had 10 different income streams. None of them were huge, but all of them were profitable. And none of them were dependent on the Chicago Board of Trade. That year, she netted $65,000. Cash. She took that money, and she went to a foreclosure auction. The 120-acre farm next to her worthless 80 was for sale. The bank was selling it. Sarah stood in the back of the crowd. When the bidding started, she raised her hand. She bought it. For a low price. No one else wanted it. The soil was poor, just like hers had been. She paid for it in full. Cash. Now she had 200 acres. Debt-free. Her father heard the news at the coffee shop. His daughter, the idealist, the hippie farmer, was buying land, while he was selling machinery to stay afloat. He drove home. He drove past her farm. He saw the healthy cattle on the green pasture. He saw the neat rows of her garden. He saw the old, rusty Alice Chalmers tractor parked by the barn, paid for, and he felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't pride, not yet. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was confusion. A deep, unsettling feeling that the world he was so certain about was maybe not the only world that existed. Let me tell you about the next 7 years. Year 4. Sarah puts the new 120 acres into a complex cover crop rotation. She lets it rest. She builds the soil. Her original 80 acres are now producing 150 bushels of corn per acre, with no commercial fertilizer. Her soil organic matter is at 4.5%. She nets $80,000, cash. Her father has a decent year. He breaks even. The bank is still on his back. Year 5. She fences the new property. She expands her cattle herd to 250 head. She starts a small on-farm store to sell her beef, eggs, and produce. It is busy every weekend. She nets $120,000, cash. Elias has to refinance the main farm. He takes on more debt to cover the old debt. The banker is kind, but firm. The numbers, he says, are not sustainable. Year 6. The local university asks to do a study on her farm. They install soil moisture probes. They take deep core samples. They are amazed at the life in her soil, the earthworms, the fungi. Her water infiltration rate is 8 inches per hour. The water soaks in like a sponge. Her father's farm, right next door, has an infiltration rate of 0.5 inch per hour. The water runs off, taking his expensive topsoil and fertilizer with it. The numbers are stark, indisputable. Year 7, 8, 9. The pattern continues. Her farm gets healthier, more diverse, more profitable. She buys another 80-acre parcel, cash. She's now farming 280 acres. She hires her first full-time employee. She starts a waiting list for other farmers who want to buy her breeding stock. Cattle adapted to a grass-fed system. Elias watches. The community watches. The talk in the coffee shop changes. It's no longer ridicule. It's curiosity. Then it's respect. Frank Gable starts telling people, "I don't know what that Vance girl is doing, but it seems to be working." Elias keeps farming his way. He is proud. He is stubborn. He has built a cathedral of modern agriculture. And he cannot admit that the foundation is cracking. He cannot admit that his little girl, with her rusty tractor and her grandfather's book, has built something stronger, more resilient, more real. Until the 10th year, the year of the flood. It was a spring that never seemed to end. Rain, day after day. The ground was saturated. Then, in late May, a storm system stalled over the state. It dropped 12 inches of rain in 48 hours. The rivers and creeks began to rise. The TV news called it a 100-year flood. The water came up fast. It spilled over the banks of the creek that divided Sarah's farm from her father's, and it began to spread out over the flat, open fields. On Elias's side, it was a catastrophe. His fields were mostly bare soil, tilled, waiting for planting. The water hit the compacted ground and just ran. It was a brown, churning sea, carrying away topsoil, carrying away the expensive fertilizer he had just applied. The erosion was devastating. Deep gullies were carved into his best fields. The financial loss was immediate and brutal, but on Sarah's side, something remarkable happened. Her fields were green, covered in a thick mat of rye and clover, pasture land. When the floodwater reached her property, it slowed down. The thick vegetation acted like a filter and a brake. The soil underneath, rich with years of organic matter, was porous, full of root channels and earthworm burrows. It drank the water. It absorbed the flood. There was almost no runoff. The water that did eventually trickle off her land and back into the creek was clear, not brown, clear. The news crews came. They filmed the devastation on her father's farm, the ruined fields, the lost soil. Then they filmed her farm, the green fields, the land that held. The contrast was on the evening news, a perfect, heartbreaking split screen. The old way, the new way. Except the new way was the oldest way of all. A week later, the water had receded. The sun was out. The scale of the damage was clear. Elias's farm was a wreck. It would take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair. Money he didn't have. Sarah's farm was fine. The pastures were a little soggy, but undamaged. Her cattle were grazing peacefully. That evening, Elias walked across the fence line. He didn't drive his truck. He walked. He found Sarah by her barn, mending a piece of fence. She looked up when he approached. She saw the look on his face. It was a look of complete and utter defeat. He wasn't holding a brochure. He wasn't talking about efficiency. He was holding 2 soil test reports, one from his farm, one from hers. He held them out. His hand was trembling slightly. "I almost taught you the wrong thing," he said. His voice was hoarse. "I was so certain. So sure that my way was the only way." He looked out over her green fields, then back at his own, which were scarred and brown. "I almost ruined you, Sarah, with what I was certain was right." It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. The kind of truth that can only be spoken after everything has been washed away. Sarah didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't say anything. She just stepped forward and hugged her father. Her proud, broken, loving father. And they stood there for a long time, between two farms, between two futures, as the sun went down. This is where the story usually ends, the triumph, the vindication. But that's not the end of the story, because what happened next changed everything. It wasn't about who was right. It was about what was right. Sarah didn't take over her father's farm. They formed a new partnership, Vance Regenerative. They didn't sell the big equipment. They used it differently. They adapted the giant planters to seed cover crops. They used the GPS to manage grazing patterns. They started the slow, expensive, decade-long process of transitioning all 2,500 acres from a chemical-intensive monoculture to a diverse, resilient, living system. Elias became his daughter's best student. He brought the same intensity to learning about soil biology that he had once brought to studying equipment specs. He became an advocate, a believer. Other farmers, seeing what the Vance farm was doing, started asking questions. Sarah didn't hoard her knowledge. She shared it. She started a co-op, a buyer's club for cover crop seed, a monthly meeting where farmers could share what was working and what wasn't. She took her data to the county board, to Frank Gable. She showed him the numbers, the water infiltration rates, the reduced input costs, the increased profitability. This time, they didn't turn her down. They gave her a grant to start a pilot program, helping other farmers in the watershed transition their land. With the profits from the farm, she established a scholarship at her alma mater, the Grandfather's Ledger Scholarship, for students studying soil science and regenerative agriculture. The Vance farm became a model, a teaching farm. University classes toured it. Politicians came for photo ops. But the real work was quiet. It was the daily moving of the fences, the constant observation, the slow, patient work of healing the land, 1 acre at a time. Today, if you go to the Vance farm, you'll find the office in the old farmhouse. On the desk, made from maple by a great-grandfather, sits a leather-bound ledger, open to a page from 1962. The handwriting is faded but clear. The land provides for those who provide for it. Next to the ledger is a tablet computer, displaying real-time soil moisture data from sensors all over the farm, the past and the future, side by side. A young girl, about 10 years old, is in the office. Elias's granddaughter, Sarah's daughter. She is tracing the old script in the ledger with her finger. She looks up at her mother. She asks, "Did Grandpa Elias really think this wouldn't work?" Sarah smiles, a slow, gentle smile. "Your grandpa always wanted what was best for the farm. He just needed to see it to believe it. And now you can." Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told they can't. Someone is being told their idea is foolish, their dream is impossible. And often, the person telling them this is not a villain. It's a parent, a mentor, a friend, someone who loves them, someone who is trying to protect them from the pain of failure. This story is for them, and for you. The gap between what others decide for you and what you can actually do is where your life is waiting. It takes work to close that gap. It takes patience. It takes the quiet courage to believe in the evidence of your own eyes, even when everyone you love is telling you not to. The land pays its own way, and so do you. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt that gap in your own life, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about the quiet work that changes the world. Thank you for listening.